Now, who would have thought there'd be so many different things going on in such a short period of time? And, we got coronavirus in Tennessee. We've got, of course, the young man that was killed in an ATV accident yesterday. Several areas around the world. In our backyard, killer tornadoes. It seems we've watched tragedy after tragedy continue to go on, and we've wrestled with feelings of shock and disbelief and feelings that over the last several years have become too familiar. The Flowers family, keep them in your prayers. Today at 3 o'clock at Bilbrey Funeral Home, there is the funeral for Stephanie Field and her son Halen, I believe 5 years old, that were killed in the tornado. Their funeral will be at Bilbrey today. If you get a chance, go by and visit and encourage that family. Let them know that we're thinking about them and that we love them. Just so many different things going on.
The search for survivors is still not complete in Tennessee after tornadoes left at least 24 people dead there. In hard-hit Putnam County, 3 people are still unaccounted for. The tornado was on the ground for more than 50 miles. That's one of the longest paths of destruction in the region's history. Now, this picture shows a house in Cookeville, Tennessee, before the storm. Our lead national correspondent, David Begnaud, shows us the scene now. Wow, David, good morning to you. I still remember the story yesterday when you said we haven't seen anything like it. Seems like that kind of story continues.
And Gail, look at this now.
Yeah.
This is what's left of that home. When you look at it, you can understand how 3 people died here. Yesterday, Gail, we told you that story of hope and survival. Today, it's one of grief. This is where the Kimberlins lived, Mom, Dad, and little baby Sawyer. I asked a relative, where in the house was Sawyer's room? And they said, right here.
We just turned 2 last week. It's now it's gone.
Dad's open.
They're all gone.
Clint Pitts shared with us these photos and videos of his sister Erin, a former school teacher, her husband Josh, a mechanical engineer, and their only child, Sawyer.
You say prayer?
The Kimberlins were devoutly Christian, and Sawyer, the grandson of a preacher, loved to direct song with one of his favorite books, the church hymnal.
There's something about a family unit going together that is, I don't know, I just can't get it out of my mind.
As terrible as this sounds, they wouldn't have wanted to live without each other. It hurts, but they're all together now. And that's all we can really, at this point, that's all we can ask for.
Just about 4 houses down from the Kimberlins is what's left of the Collins home. Matt is a youth minister at a local church. He and his wife were hurt, but they will survive. Their 4-year-old daughter, Hattie, was killed, and their youngest child, Lainey, was critically injured. She turns 1 today. Both families lived in this neighborhood, where homes are little more than trash piles now. 18 people died in Putnam County, Tennessee. The National Weather Service confirms that the tornado here had winds of more than 175 miles per hour.
How are we still here?
When you speak to survivors along this street, like Eric Grooms, who has nothing left but the foundation of his home and the carpet that his family sat on while the closet walls flew away, this is what they say.
God just put his hand down and said, nope, you're not taking these today. I mean, literally, you take the floor and the house and leave the people. No. Nobody can do that but God. Nobody.
4 people walked away from the Grooms' home, which is right across the street from where the Kimberlins live. And I'm standing on the Kimberlin slab this morning. I asked the relatives, where could they have possibly gone to live? And the relatives think the only space would have been here, the crawl space under the house. But the reality is, because we'll never know what their final moments were like, nobody will know if they ever had time to even get here, Anthony.
Yeah. Oh, wow, David.
Oh, David, that is a lot of pain. You told an incredible story there. I don't even know what to say after listening to the stories of those families. I'm touched by Clint Pitts' brother saying that they're all together, as painful as that is to hear
exactly. That. I mean, that question lingers. How are we all, the ones who survived, how are we all still here?
The terrible randomness of it all.
They've asked the churches to sing a song for this child. They love this song. and we're going to post it on Facebook for them. They're asking different churches to do this morning. The Sawyer's favorite song, one he was leading singing in the thing. And so we're going to sing that song for them. So if y'all would stand up, Matt's going to lead us in that.
Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, early in the morning our song shall rise to thee. Holy, 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 merciful and mighty, God over all and blessed eternally. Holy, 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 though the darkness hide thee, though the eye of sinful man thy glory may not see. Only thou art holy, there is none beside thee, perfect in power, in love and purity. Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, all thy works shall praise thy name in earth and sky and sea. Holy, 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 merciful and mighty, God over all and blessed eternally.
Again, we'll be posting that video. Y'all can be seated. We'll be posting that video online as been requested. And send our love out to that family and to their family and all those people that are hurting during this difficult time. And be praying for all the different ones. Yesterday we sent a group over. As you know, this thing has affected a lot more people. By the way, let's take a moment and let our little ones, they can leave now. We just wanted them to have an opportunity to be in the video. So if you little ones that go into Kid Street Live, y'all can be dismissed and you get to go. But can you imagine having videos from several congregations singing and uplifting to the family and letting them know that they have brothers and sisters all over? I think that's a pretty neat idea. And so we're going to post that for them. This particular family here, that's Matt and Macy Collins. Their little daughter there, Hattie, that's where I was all day, most of the day yesterday was at their home. They just went home yesterday, by the way. They've all been in the hospital. The baby was at Vanderbilt and was in serious condition. My understanding is I believe the baby got to come home yesterday. They were both had to have surgery, the adults, but their little 4-year-old was killed in the thing. And we went over yesterday and we worked. We just worked. And this is their neighborhood. Actually, this is the front of their house. They had 2 vehicles that were destroyed. So we went over looking and just see what we could find of their possessions that we might be able to find. We couldn't find much. To be honest, we were going through because they had some documents they needed for taxes and things of that nature, and they had a little safe, and we were hoping we'd be able to dig through the rubble and find that safe for them. There was nothing. That was their backyard. There was nothing. We wound up with all the stuff that we could get in 2 bags. And that was it. And we went and visited with them. Actually, we went with they were the youth ministers at the College Side Church. He had just moved to College Side from the Jefferson Street Church of Christ. I went over there with the youth minister who is his best friend, who had encouraged him to come from the Jefferson Street Church of Christ. And he had, the Jefferson Street Church of Christ. They had just moved there, moved to Jefferson Street. He called his friend, who's a Freed-Hardeman graduate, and best friends, and he got him to come over there to that church. And of course, they lost their loved ones, and he was the one that had to go and tell the family that their child had been found. So it was pretty emotional for him yesterday, us going over there and going through that stuff and dealing with those things. But you just think of all those things that were going on, and all the people's lives that affected. That's just one. This one street was both those families that we just talked about lived on that same street. 8 other people on that same street died. You'd think you'd seen enough, and then the tornadoes roll in, a roaring wind just sucks the life out of a community, out of an area. And now you see the fruits of viruses and tornadoes and, cities in total shock. Memphis just had their first case of coronavirus yesterday. And then we had one out of Williamson, I believe it was Williamson County the day before that. But, and then yesterday, thousands of people digging through rubble looking for stuff. When I first went over there, I went over looking for people. I went over with the rescue squad to begin with, and digging through, you go through and you see people digging through the rubble looking for loved ones. Optimistic rescuers. Then there's opportunity looters and grateful people and resentful people. I mean, we've seen it all. And you, and as much as anybody, have reason to wonder, what's going on? And I didn't mention nor intend to minimize, we've had our own flooding here in the last couple of months that was, we went out and there's people stuck and had to be saved and things of that nature. Jesus criticized the leaders of his time and the people of his time ignoring what's going on around him. He says, you find it easy enough to forecast the weather. Why can't you read the signs of the times? So what can you learn from all of this? What can you learn from all the different things that are going on? Is God sending a message? I think he is. And I think we'd be wise to pay attention to those messages that we get in these things, even in the difficult times in our lives. There's some spiritual lessons that I think God would want us to learn through tragedy. And so here's what we're going to be talking about this morning. First thing is I think God teaches us that the nature of possessions is temporary. Just like that, everything was gone. And guys, I'm telling you, I've been to, this is probably my 10th tornado. This is probably, it wasn't as big as the one in Birmingham that I went to that had a mile wide, and now I've forgotten how long. But if it hit hard. We were talking about, I mentioned to somebody today that, we were talking about going over. There's not a lot of things for us to do over there. Unless you've got a backhoe or a bulldozer. It's not like we're going in people's houses and fixing their house back. There's no house there. I mean, and we realize how temporary things are. A lot of us are so worried about what we have and what's going to happen and all the different things in our lives, and in a moment, it could be gone. Just like that. And it could have just as easily been Crossville, Tennessee. It could have just as easily been Line Area Community. It could have just as easily been your community as what happened the other night. And the thing that we need to learn about this is your possessions are temporary. One news reporter who spent a day talking with survivors talked about how the thing that he noticed, he spent the whole day there talking to survivors. He said there was not a single person there that didn't mention God. That God was there. Now, the people who don't believe in God will say, no, he wasn't. Why did God abandon those people? Those people said, God was in all this. All our stuff is gone, but we're here. No one was standing out there lamenting their loss of their big screen TV. But I went over there on Wednesday morning when we first began. They weren't running through the street saying, my cordless phone is missing. My golf clubs have been blown away. By the way, I went in one house. This guy must have been a real golf. There was 150,000 golf balls scattered all over the place. But I didn't hear him running around saying, man, help me get these golf balls up. This is important. No one was running through the streets yelling, my cordless drill's missing. All these different things. If they mourned for people lost. If they rejoiced, they didn't rejoice, even the people whose houses were good, they didn't rejoice that their houses were good. They rejoiced over people that were found. They realized what was important. Now, could Jesus be reminding us that people are more important than our possessions? In something like this? In a land where there's more malls and high schools, more debt than credit, more clothes to wear than you could wear, could Jesus be saying this? Watch out. Be on guard against all kinds of greed. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of the things which he possesses. Maybe that's what he's trying to tell us. I mean, we saw entire areas which were once thriving in ruin. I saw some demolished $40,000 cars that were destroyed, hidden in the debris. And in the background of our minds, we hear the quiet echo of Jesus saying, what good will it be for a man to gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Tornadoes, floods have a way of prying our fingers off the stuff that we love. What was once most precious now means little. The things that go on, the things we think are important are not. The things that we place so much emphasis on mean nothing. And maybe that's what God is trying to tell us. I talked to people there when I was there. I went to one house. The next door neighbor the woman was the manager of the Walmart in Salina, Tennessee. Her and her husband were killed next door. This lady was out in the yard trying to find any little bitty thing that she could find, and she's talking about her husband was in the ICU in critical condition because she talked about how our house was slung up against a tree and everything. She said, I didn't even feel the house move. All of a sudden, we were trying to find a way to crawl out from under all the stuff. One of the things, bright moments we had in that was went through and, of all things, found a dog. They found a dog. It was the dog. It was in a house that had totally been destroyed. Everything was caved in. There was a cage there. The cage was crumpled down, and this little bitty old beagle hound was in there. And you talking about a happy dog to see somebody, and to get out of that cage. The family was tickled to death to get their pet back, but their lives had been spared. Awesome. One little 8-year-old boy talked about how that he was sucked out of his house. He said, I flew, and he did. He flew through the air for 2 or 3 blocks, landed in the road. They found him walking down the road. His parents got killed. Another one, a parent that I was talking to said, my alarm went off. I got up, I went into my daughter's room. She's hard of hearing. She has hearing aids. I hollered at my daughter, wake up, wake up. Said she sat up in the bed. As soon as she sat up in the bed, the roof come off the house. I was hit by a door. I was under the door. Things were falling all over around me and everything. My daughter was gone. The daughter woke up next door in the swimming pool next door. And she survived. But you know what? She said, no, this doesn't mean nothing. None of this means nothing. I had my daughter. Thank y'all for checking on us, but we've got our lives. I remember when I went to Hurricane Katrina, and I remember going over here, the first thing we did, we went to the church there where they had set up a disaster relief center. I remember the one that was in Durham Springs, Mississippi. They had taken their auditorium and turned it into a relief center, which means, you know what it means when you have your auditorium full of stuff, it means you can't get in and have worship services. Now, there are a lot of churches would have pitched a fit. You know what they did? They met in the parking lot. I remember the church leaders had organized an assembly to pray for the victims. They met in the front of the building. They had no electricity. They had no water. All these people had was what they had on when the hurricane had come through, had blown through and destroyed all their stuff that they have. And most of the church, most of them were in T-shirts and jeans. Their faces were weary from the week. But when the song started to worship, they started to sing. That whole church sang with tears in their eyes because they were still there. They said, we're rich. Now, let me ask you this question. Are you that rich? Where all of your possessions blown away, would you still worship? Would you still worship? If not, you're holding on to things too tightly. He says in 1 Timothy 6, 17 through 19, tell those who are rich in this world's wealth to quit being so full of themselves and so obsessed with money, which is here today and gone tomorrow. Tell them to go after God, who piles on all the riches we could ever manage, to do good, to be rich in helping others, to be extravagantly generous. If they do that, they'll build a treasure that will last, gaining life that is truly life. So through disaster, Christ tells us, listen, stuff doesn't matter much. I mean, in the big scheme of things, it matters nothing. Understand the nature of possessions. If God were trying to send us a message, well, what's going on? He would tell you, quit worrying so much stuff about your stuff. Second thing is the nature of people, sinners and saints. And we saw the most incredible servants. Thousands of people showed up. Yesterday, thousands upon thousands of people were there to volunteer. So much so that they really didn't have room for everybody that was there. I mean, the most incredible servants of selflessness and sacrifice that was going on. We see people rescuing their neighbors. When it first hit, it took a while for rescuers to get there. It was neighbors helping neighbors. A lot of people were in such shock that they said that all they were doing just walking towards the woods. They didn't even know where they were going. They were just walking away in a stun, and people were having to lead them back into, where it was safe. But they were so stunned with what was going on, and they would lead them to a place and set them down and get them out of the shock that they were in. We saw neighbors going to their neighbors. I talked to one. She said, this guy saved me. My neighbor saved me. She's in her 80s. She said, the house completely fell in. She said, my neighbor came over. So I didn't even know him. We've been living there for a long time. Didn't even know this guy. He didn't know me. I didn't know him. But as soon as it hit, the guy across the next door, his house didn't get as much damage. He heard it. He said, first thing he thought, I better check on my neighbor. He said, I went out. It was dark. He said, it took me a few minutes to get where I could see something. I thought, oh, my neighbor. He went over to the neighbor. He said everything was down on the ground. He said, I just started crawling. And I said, are you in there? Are you in there? He said he found me, and I got out. He said, he's my hero. There was a neighbor, didn't even know him. But that's what it was, neighbors helping neighbors. We saw humanity at its best. We see people, and this church, man, I had call after call. I was over there, again, trying to look. I was looking for people. And people saying, hey, man, I want to come over. I said, man, you can't come over yet. Just hold on. I know you want to come, but you can't come yet because it's too dangerous. Power lines and all the different things that were there. And people want, well, what can we do? And by the way, this church is going to do something. We don't know what we're going to do yet. We're still assessing the situation, see what we're going to do. We're going to do something. And you can do something. In the weeks to come, it's going to take weeks. I had some of our older ones say, hey, we're going to go over and we're going to help in the disaster center. We're going to help some of these families, and we're going to go over and just love on some people. I mean, that's what was happening. But then we saw the other part of humanity. You know, they had to put a curfew on because people were coming in. They arrested a guy for trying to steal people's wiring out of their house after the tornado. So, I mean, you see the best of people and you see the worst of people. Someone said, the heavens declare the glory of God and the streets declare the sinfulness of men. We are a people both of dignity and depravity. And disasters can blow back more than roofs. It can blow back the masks off the nature of mankind. The main problem in the world is not Mother Nature, it's human nature. Now again, we are so blessed to live in the area which we live in. So blessed. Because, again, I told you about the story of the news reporter who wrote a whole article on the fact, he said, everybody I talked to said, I've never been in a situation where I heard God's name used so much. But then you had the other side. I mean, you don't have to show them how to stomp their feet and pout. It's our nature to be ugly sometimes. Isaiah 53 verse 6, all of us have strayed like sheep. We've all left God's path and followed our own. God has chosen us to serve Him, but sometimes we don't. And the biggest problem of man is the word sin. And the biggest part of sin is the middle letter, S-I-N, the I. He says here in Ephesians 2:3, we doing what we felt like doing when we felt like doing it. That's what a lot of us are. We don't have to go where these disasters are to see chaos. Because of sin, husbands ignore their wives. Young prostitute to the old. When you do what you need to do or do what you want, humanity and civility implodes. And that's really a problem with our society that we have today. And when the tornadoes of life blown in, our true nature is revealed. And our deepest need is unveiled. And the deepest need for food, more than that, more permanent than firm levees, we need not a system but a nature. We need to be changed from the inside out to be, as we talk about, more like Jesus. And then I learned the nature of God, inside out. You know, much discussion revolves around what's going to happen to the future. Will the neighborhoods be restored? Will they be repaired? That young family that I just talked about that lost their child. Honestly, I told them when I was there yesterday and saw what I saw yesterday in that particular neighborhood, I would never go back to that place and bring my child to live there again. I'd let them bulldoze it down and I would find me another place, because every time I'd go in, I'd think about that 4-year-old that was taken out of that house. I couldn't do it. Now, they may do it, and that's good if they do, and they're a better person than I am if they could do it. I just couldn't do it. But we know that they're going to rebuild that area. One thing is for certain, someone has to clean it up. No one's suggesting otherwise. Everyone knows someone has to go in there and someone has to clean up the mess. So that's kind of what God offers for us, isn't it? He comes in, a sin-flooded lives, and washes all that away. Paul reflected in Titus chapter 3 and verse 5, he said this: He gave us a good bath, and we came out of it new people, washed inside and out by the Holy Spirit. Our sins stand no chance against the cleaning power of Jesus' blood. But He does more than cleanse us, He rebuilds us. God moves in. He starts a complete renovation project in our lives. He tells us, again, in Ephesians chapter 3 and verse 20, this is a Message translation, God can do anything, you know, far more than you could ever imagine or guess or request in your wildest dreams. He does it not by pushing us around, but by working within us, His Spirit deeply and gently within us. And what we can only dream of doing in these hardest hit areas, God has done to soul after soul after soul, and He'll do it to you if you'll let Him. What rescuers did for people in those hard hit areas, God will do for you. He has entered into our world. He has come into our sin-swamped lives. He has come in to rescue us. Again, I remember back years ago when I went to Katrina and the church meeting on that Sunday after the storm. I mentioned that earlier. And I remember the minister giving the message. I still remember that message. He just got up and he read one verse. I thought that was so neat. Genesis 6 and verse 8. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. That was it. The lesson helped us to see the things that Noah could not find because of the flood. He couldn't find his neighborhood. He could not find his house. He could not find the comforts of home and the people down the street. There was much that Noah could not find when he got off that ark. But it says, but Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. And if you have everything and no grace, you have nothing. But if you have nothing but grace, you have everything. He found grace. And if you don't have grace, I urge you today to do what one of the little girls told us. When the rescues appeared at her porch, she said, I grabbed him and I closed my eyes and I just held on. That's what we need to do. If you ever have, or if you ever would like to, or urge to reach out your hand to a rescuer, it would be Jesus Christ. Your Redeemer lives. These things, you know, he sometimes brings us these things to remind us of these things. If you're here today, maybe you need rescue. Maybe you've put too much confidence in the things that you have. You need to give them to God. God has a church to help you. He sent us as kind of his aid workers here. But God is the great rescuer, and he'll do that this morning. And if we can help you, I want to encourage you, as we stand, we offer the invitation.